Can you tell me about coming into your own as a creative and what that process was like for you?
Gosh, I have no idea. I think it's maybe why I like pop music so much is because there's eras. And I feel like...
Errors?
Yeah. So I feel like my life has been a little eras, like in the sense that I was a teacher and then I did like museum work and then I did youth arts work and then I did community arts work and now I sort of focus on my own practice. So I don't feel like I've come into my own. It's just that I'm like constantly kind of chasing something that's next, maybe. But I think what's so interesting is that like at 17, I knew who I wanted to be. It took a long time to be brave enough to be it. Or I didn't go into that straight away because it wasn't just bravery. I also just didn't understand how to be in the arts because it still wasn't something that, despite having a university education, that was like explicitly taught. And because I was like a regional kid, not that I felt that way because my family were much more rural before that. So I felt like but looking back, I'm like, oh no, I actually lived in a region. I was a regional kid. The access to the arts creatively that I felt like I had was often the artists that came into the school.
Mm-hmm.
And like without them, I don't know if I would have gone, oh my God, I want to do that. That's awesome. I wish I could do that, which is why I've kind of had this, been working on a recent project of like something that can go into schools, something that can go into community centres rather than just the big box theatres and things like that, so that I'm reaching those kids as well. So I feel like it is interesting that I've known for a really long time, but it just took a little bit longer to work up the bravery and the understanding of how to do it. But I'm also grateful for that because I think it's been a lot less common than it might have been, to be honest. So I'm kind of grateful that I've been able to also learn from community before I have taken certain steps to have the arts practice that I have today. So it's been like the journey has happened exactly how it was meant to.
Where did the bravery come from?
It's a great question. There's no real one catalyst, but it came from truth, wanting to tell the truth. And that truth at that time was I was working with, as a teacher, Indigenous students who had come from remote communities to go to boarding school. And my job was to look after them, to protect them the best I could in this incredibly Western, incredibly unsafe education system. And there were a lot of misconceptions, or let's be real, exactly how the colony is designed. So the colony was just doing its work around why those students were there, and also the expectations that were put on them were ridiculous. I had experienced a non-Indigenous company making theatre with students, Markwell Presents, when I was a teacher at Villanova College. And I remember thinking that was really cool. And I was like, wow, it's actually these young people's voices on a stage. And I watched the young men at Villanova just love that.
Okay.
And so I think I'd like always had that little piece in the back of my mind. And I'd been sitting around going, okay, I'd love to be able to tell these students deserve to tell their story. And theatre could be a really beautiful way to do it. And I think when I watched in 2011, and this is part of, I think, the catalyst, or it's definitely part of the law, isn't it? Where in 2011 we lost my granddad on the 1st of September, and that was somewhat expected. And then we lost my uncle, his brother, on the 1st of December in 2011. and that was less expected.
Mm.
And my uncle was a well-known football player. Lots of people were lots of people were impacted by my grandfather's death as well, but lots of people were impacted by my uncle's calling, and I had such a beautiful last memory with him. I was actually with some of my students at like a QRL careers day, and uncle was very much talking to them about, you know, what is going to be your lifelong vocation. And it was a beautiful last memory to have. And then I thought about, like, you watch all these people get impacted. You watch people come from Cairns to go to a state funeral, and you go, oh, well, that person made this impact because they did what they loved. And so I loved theatre. I knew there was a part of me that loved theatre. And I was like, well, perhaps the thing that I need to do is just make this theatre and go and make that theatre and do the thing that I love. And that's how I can perhaps create some kind of, for want of a better word, change.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Was there like something that I know you said like when you're young you saw stuff, but was there work that you were seeing at the time that were like, I want to be there?
Yeah, I think like all around that same time, like we would take the students to everything being made by like every artist we could. And I remember, this might not be that, but God, it might have Chasing the Lolly Man.
Okay. I don't know it.
I think it could be Sean's work.
Okay.
I remember my cousin, my mum's sister, Bianca Beetson, did the set design for that. And I remember, I feel like that's my first real vivid memory of Indigenous theatre, like in the way that it felt less, nothing came into my school that looked like that, for sure.
Yeah.
And then I think there was one thing at uni that they showed us that I was like, this feels like something else. So like I remember that. I also think that Uncle Kev Carmody, when I think I was dating someone at the time that got me a ticket to go see when he did his Cannot Buy My Soul. I think it was Queensland Music Festival. Cannot remember it. Based on the timeline, it's probably 2008, 2009. And I remember seeing, and I was like, all these musicians were like performing these songs for this wonderful singer-songwriter. And I think something about, I don't know, this Darling Downs, like someone who grew up in Toowoomba, and hearing the way that he sang stories about the droving from this, I was like, oh, this is another way I can tell stories as an Indigenous person. And it can be through, you know, my lived experience, which is kind of vast. You know, I grew up riding horses and things like that. So I feel like there were all these little pieces. There's never been one moment, but it's like these pieces kind of fit in. I remember that being really monumental because it showed me the colony, particularly through the education system, which I stayed in a long time because I was a teacher. So it wasn't like the education system kept me like in this certain space just for my schooling. You then go and have that same system replicated. And, you know, I was fortunate that my family definitely gave me like that understanding of who we are outside of the education system, but they've had to, like me, work hard to get the knowledge that was taken from us.
Yeah.
So I feel very like I was in that education system for so long, so I was being given the images of what the colony says Black people like are in past tense because that's what they wanted it to seem like, this past tense notion. However, you know, through the work I've gotten to do with community and like with my family and things like that, we know that that's now different. And I feel like, yeah, that's possibly why I love music so much as well, is because of how easy this concert, like how quickly this concert kind of changed this perception for me. And I remember that being like a significant thing. And then just being, yeah, and then I feel like everything that I kind of consumed after I made that first play, we kind of made another one a year later. There was just all this wonderful work being done by black fellas, but also like Black and Brown Women with Hot Brown Honey. I remember seeing that show for the first time. And what's so gorgeous is I know them like personally now, but I remember seeing that like before I'd had any of my bigger kind of works, for want of a better phrase. And I remember seeing that and just being like, oh my gosh, this is like the coolest thing I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah.
Like it was the coolest thing I've ever seen in my life. And so, yeah, like there's these little, it's a beautiful constellation of moments that is me following the path that I was destined to follow.
Mm-hmm. Tell me about your first work.
Yeah, my first work was a play that was the first one with Digi Youth Arts. We were Digi Youth Theatre for 2 months.
Okay.
And I realised I had this inkling that I was going to start a arts org and not a theatre org. And so I changed the name pretty quickly.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess that is telling. So it was the first ever work I did with Digi Youth Arts. It was with those young people in boarding school. It was Glad Tomorrow, and at the time we'd gotten permission to use that, which is a title of an Oodgeroo Noonuccal poem. It's in one of those poems. And we got 20 Indigenous students together and did workshops about their experiences. And then we put on a show with 10 of them on stage. And a couple
You're
of
still
them,
a teacher at the time?
I was still a teacher at the time. So we did this on Saturdays, and we worked with, I think, 3 different schools, and like so many of my teacher friends were volunteering on the project as well, or just friends. Like it was that classic, your friends kind of make your first work. But it did, like, it was sold out. It was, youth theatre is, you take people who are whispering on the first day, and people who are not used to it just think I'm crazy because they're like, is this play going to happen the way Alethea thinks it is? And it does. Like they come out on stage, they say their lines with so much ferocity and pride. And then my friends, I never got to see it because I was usually in the box or in the audience. Then the people backstage are like, just the look on their faces when they come off the stage, like, oh my God, I did that. It was wonderful. And we kind of told 3 main stories. We kind of touched on the 3 main themes, which was, there was a year 8 boy played by a student of mine who had really bad homesickness, and we just kind of left it in the homesickness kind of bracket. And then we had a year 12 student played by an incredible young woman, Tennille Lawton, and that character was like the ridiculous expectations that we were putting on young people. Like, you're going to fix everything, was what these white teachers are telling them. And it's like, hold up, what do they need to fix to begin with? What are you talking about? And just the level of pressure they were putting on them, which is, a colonial form of pressure. And then we had Tibian Wiles, who I've worked with many times. And I think it was his first play, actually, while he was studying at ACPA, which is gorgeous. He played a character that was about the cultural yearning and about how, like, it wasn't for him and he needed to be on country because that was, like, just a missing part. And eventually why I kind of left that part of education, because I really struggled with having to keep young people in this environment when I clearly wanted to be back home on country. And we really wanted to make sure we told that story within the play.
From your teaching practice, what were you taking as a teacher and the rules of teaching into playmaking and theatre making?
I think young people can see if you're not yourself within a second.
Okay.
That was my understanding. I remember my first year being like, I'm going to be like this and I'm going to be like teacher.
You're putting on a mask
I'm going to be a teacher.
Yeah.
And I think they saw through that in a minute.
Yeah,
and the minute I was myself.
Tell me more about why did you do that?
Because that's what you're modeled, I guess. I think it was something that I thought I had to do. And I mean, I'm sure I think I was watching a Jinx Monsoon. Everything in life is some form of drag, right?
Okay,
So
yeah.
like I was probably just playing that role in the same way that we play certain roles. But I found that it's probably more the other way around. It's like what I liked more about making theatre as an arts practitioner is I could be more honest. You could be more honest. Whereas obviously and rightly so when you're in these other roles, there's different kinds of boundaries. So like you can't, like it's the age-old thing where you're up front talking about don't smoke, don't drink, and meanwhile that's what you're doing on the weekend.
Yeah.
You know?
In the staff room.
Like when we were growing up, they were doing it in the staff room probably. So I feel like there was just something more authentic for me about actually working with young people. And I'd say I left teaching 2 years after my first play.
Okay.
Yeah. And I haven't taught since.
Tell me about that. Tell me about leaving teaching.
It was never what I wanted to do.
Was it a scary jump?
No.
Or were there moments of...
No, the only thing that's scary is like when you probably have a brain like mine and aren't the best with money and live a little paycheck to paycheck at the time. And so like the financial, it was more like those things like having to take a temporary contract after, teaching when you get a full-time job. It's permanent. That's a pretty, what they tell you is a very secure thing to do, right?
Yes,
so like,
it's safe.
It's safe, do this. And so that was probably the thing. But again, these are other narratives and also like and narratives that existed for a reason because like I know that, and this is their story, not mine, but I know that like my family worked really hard to give me an education and like gave me a lot. And like that for them, that was incredibly important that I have the education that I have. And I may not have been grateful for that at the time, but I am now.
Yeah.
I'm grateful for it now. That is for sure. So I feel like it was fortunately when I was just about to graduate university, I had a wonderful tutor. I think it's Josephine Wiseman. I'm not quite sure. Kudos for me if I am remembering all this correctly. But I said like I didn't really want to be a teacher. And they said to me, you have a choice to be standing in front of that classroom. Those students don't have a choice on who stands in front of that classroom. So you need to make sure that, you do the best job you can or whatever. Yeah,
like if you're in it, the children
they deserve this.
Someone who wants to be there.
And I probably was always going to, but that stayed with me. And then there was someone working at the bar that I worked at Crushers Leagues Club down in the TOB bar.
Okay.
And someone worked in the bar and said, I think I said something to them like, I don't know if I want to be a teacher or something. And this random regular, I had quite a reputation at that bar for my attitude. But this regular was like, when you talk, people listen. That's a gift. You should use that. And those two things really stayed with me. And that's what made me really commit to teaching, even though I didn't necessarily think that's what I was going to do forever. I actually ended up at the Indigenous education program because it was a part-time job and I needed a part-time job where I went off to study law. Again, because the world said you're smart, you should study something like law. And I was like, okay, I guess that's what I'll do.
What was that like?
Didn't love it.
Yeah.
It was good for me to come undone. Eventually in law, there's too much reading for you to do the night before.
Okay.
And I was like, what's happening? Why? After 2 years, I was like, why can't I just automatically do well at this? And I was like, oh, because my system of just being able to do things the night before no longer works here.
Yeah, you get to a point where
it's impossible to read that much material in 2 days.
Yeah, it is impossible to just have embodied knowledge unless you are.
You just I probably came undone. But it also I couldn't see it fitting with me, that it just wasn't taking. And then
Did you finish the degree?
No. And because I kind of started the play around the same time, like halfway through. So that's sort of what led to that. And then, I had because of my work at Digi, thought someone had kind of mentioned that there was this job going at a museum. and it was like an Indigenous engagement coordinator job, and they often employed teachers in places. See, I didn't really know that teachers even got employed in other places.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like I had such a narrow understanding of things. And then I went and worked, at a museum, and that's where I think for the first time, there was definitely other Indigenous teachers. There's other Indigenous teachers at Villa, but just not in my area. But what was really lovely about the museum is I just had the most. I feel like it was. I was there for a while, but I just remember learning so much in the first 6 months because it allowed for. I got to work with other mob.
Okay.
Quite directly.
What museum?
Queensland Museum.
Queensland Museum.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's where I got to work with some incredible Black fellas, but also South Sea Islander woman that was instrumental to like how I think and the way that they taught me how to kind of do community engagement whilst being in an institution. So how to...
Can you explain that more? Like, what is that
How
process?
to like actually serve your community whilst also giving it to the institution a little bit better. Because I found that I definitely look back at teaching and I was like, oh, maybe I didn't speak up enough. And then I have memories of me and officers being like, well, that teacher said this and they shouldn't have said that. And I was like, yeah, okay, I definitely was someone who did, but I just was really, I don't know, I found it difficult to get very far. Again, maybe because I was in the private system and it was very difficult to kind of make a complaint about other teachers being racist and not actually achieving anything.
Yeah.
So not that they're, to be fair, not exactly not difficult in like government institutions either. It's a problem everywhere. But it was because I was surrounded by these like incredible practitioners that had like the background that they had in like, you know, and they had, some of them had way like deeper connections to community because of the way that colonization worked for them, et cetera. And so I was able to kind of learn from them on how to like best serve my community whilst being inside these institutions and kind of advocating for change.
Can you talk to me about how you approach serving community?
It depends. Like, it really depends on the project. It depends on what I'm doing. The reality is like I don't see, first and foremost, if my role, which most of them have, like in the arts, not all of them, but a lot have had the title First Nations in it, Indigenous in it, Aboriginal Torres Strait Islander. Therefore, I believe that that's who I'm working for first.
Yeah, that you may be employed by an institution,
but I am
you're
working for that community first.
Yeah.
Like that has to be like the thing that guides the choices that you make.
Has that ever put you in a challenging position?
Yes, constantly.
Tell me.
Oh, no. I think I've been a challenge everywhere. So,
okay. Yeah.
I've been a challenge everywhere because I also, authenticity, like I am honest and I have found that honesty is not all, like often as you would know, you're brought into these places to create so-called change. You're the first person in a role, which is often not true. Someone's been doing the work before you, often unpaid, often without recognition, or they've fumbled a past project so badly. Like there's always, like that's what you're walking into.
Yeah. And
so, and it's all lovely on paper, but there's no mechanism to even, not that and this is, I believe in reform either, but there's no mechanism once you're in these institutions for supporting that change. So your job is just constantly putting your hand up, pointing out the problems. And not everyone deals with that well.
Do you feel like you achieved something within that?
Within speaking honestly?
Yeah.
I think so. You know, like, I think so. Like, I figured out who I was.
Mm.
And that was someone that was, may never say never, but I don't know if I'm cut out for public service in that context.
Yeah.
I definitely remember it. I'm thinking not just there, I'm thinking about other places that where I've worked where there have been like friction, so to speak. I feel like, I can't remember if it was my auntie or someone that said like, well, that person, regardless of what that outcome was, that person's going to think twice about saying something racist like that ever again. But fundamentally, it's about what the community got. And I think in both spaces, it shifted things in a way that was helpful for the next person and the next person. And I was also just doing something after. I was one of those next people, right? Yeah. And so it definitely did help, and it definitely, but I was the next runner in the relay, and now someone else gets to go on and do X, Y, and Z. And it was, the same at Big Sound and all of these places where it has been a challenge. Everywhere is a challenge, but it kind of opens it up to ensure that more First Nations artists, community members, curators, whatever it is, whoever they are, whatever their skills are, have those opportunities. And they're very different. Like in the museum, that task is huge, and some of it's not my area of expertise, but there's big work that needs to be done in the museum sector around cultural heritage, repatriation.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Big work. And we did a project there on Settle with Digi Youth Arts where we had, I think it was 70 Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander young people made artwork in response to cultural heritage collections and repatriation across street art, music, film, theatre, visual art and dance. It was one of the largest.
How many people did you say?
70 young people. It went for a year and a half. It was probably one of the largest youth residencies of that kind.
Yeah.
We had 2 gorgeous murals painted at the front of the Queensland Museum, and they were dealing with the issue of repatriation and then also like of cultural objects being actual ancestors. And so for those, they sat outside the museum for quite some time. We had a visual art exhibition that was all made by young people. We did a theatre show in the foyer. I did that one called Anthropology, where we looked at like the 70s, like in particular. Yeah, it was really interesting.
Within like a program like that, how do you, where it is that many artists, how do you keep a through line or an overarching theme and keep it alive when there are so many moving parts?
Creative producers, as well. Like I was the like lead creative producer, and I also acknowledge Emily Wells, who was like a D-Way emerging creative producer at the time and did an incredible job. But and she worked on that project for the same 1 year and a half that I did, and that through line, having us at every workshop, like I was at every workshop that happened across that program, to allow for that through line. But we worked with such incredible artists as well. So I was the creative producer, but then we had lead artists across each art form. So like Katina Olsen did some of the dance in Brisbane. Ryan Presley did visual art. And I think Libby Harwood, Warrior Weatherall did street art. I looked after theatre. And so we had like other artists there, and I think they brought their own expertise. But the reality was like, and we followed the same process. So we would always do like a back of house tour with Mob, and then we would also go up to, and like we loved it the most, but like level 6, I think it was, and it was like the science kind of research area. Where, I don't know, there was just, we really like.
What did you love about it?
The kids always just loved it because that one person that's researched that one bug their whole life is really passionate about that bug, right? And I just wonder if there's something that syncs with being really passionate about culture. I don't
Yeah,
know.
like
Even though it's
discovery
also
and-
kind of the opposite, because that's like a really tricky space for mob
Yeah.
as well. But there was just something about the relationship that would always happen, and everyone loved Level 6.
Okay.
I just remember it being like a joyous kind of really, and some of like, yeah, some of the like the most wonderful people, but also like the commitment that some of those researchers have for ultimately country was quite interesting. Like there was someone there who literally regardless of what's happening, every Saturday morning was going out and making sure this dugong population was, you know, safe. And so there was these interesting crossovers in a place where there's actually been like significant harm, as we know, like within the museum. But so like Level 5, which is where our cultural objects and ancestors are, is also an incredibly tricky space as well.
Yeah, it's a tricky one.
The whole place is.
Yeah.
So I feel like that and to sit here and think that there's a true line that we created is almost pretty naive, because we're in a place of such everywhere is a place of ancestral power. But, you know, Unsettle was very much guided by everything that was there.
Mm-hmm.
And what was there was so much of like, you know, literal like ancestors guiding the way in particular.
Amazing. Tell me about working on Big Sound and going into the music space.
Yeah, I think 2018, I was there from 2018 to 2021. And I remember I'd started my doctorate and left the museum to do that. So I was kind of just working at Digi Youth Arts. And I needed like a small amount of work, like not a huge amount. That was a lie, but it's not what it ended up being. And I also remembered I had this like original like thinking around, I think I was telling you about this yesterday. Like some job had come up as a First Nations producer, and I think it was for a festival of some kind. And I remember thinking, I don't think I'm that strong in music yet. And I remember identifying that in my brain and going, I guess I should go work on being better at music programming. And then, classic me, one of my friends joked that when I said that to them, who's known me for a very long time, was like, you'll be in a band in 6 months or something ridiculous because you'll overdo it. And I feel like I'm like, look up and I'm like, oh gosh, all I do is music now. So I feel that job came up. I kind of applied and was like, here are my skills. Don't have the music skills, but I've been doing this work in this specific community where the festival is.
Is it something you wanted to do?
Interested. I was interested in doing it. I have tried to approach everything with if these skills are helpful, then great. If they're not, then great. I think it's just the easiest way. Again, because if you are of service to the community, then that's kind of how it should be, if that makes sense. Like if my skills are of use, then great. If someone's else are more of use, then even better. So but I loved music and I loved Indigenous music so much. And I felt, again, like I was being nudged in that direction for a reason, because as challenging as it was working in that space, and any space is challenging to work in, just getting to connect with artists and being able to advocate for artists is, you know, a really lovely privilege and a service that I don't take for granted. And I felt like also, as an artist who makes theatre predominantly, a little bit of film, you could see that you needed multiple skills or a portfolio style kind of career to be able to, again, going back to that wage that I'd said no to, I feel like I found value for me knowing my personality, knowing who I am, because of everything that I'd learnt prior, in being able to advocate in an art form that was not mine, because I can say what I need to say. And I don't really care because I don't want to be on your festival bill. So I'm not a musician.
Yeah.
So I can say,
there's
speak
no
comfortably.
bias.
No,
Yeah.
I can go, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And in theatre, whilst I will still speak my mind, at the end of the day, I sometimes need my show to be inside their playhouse. So there's things that I have to navigate in that world. But also then on a very human level, I know me, and I was like, I don't want to like, what if I'm working on other people's shows and I resent it in any way because I'm not getting to do the thing I love. And so it was also just like looking at it even from a human level.
Yeah.
And so I was kind of, okay, great. I'm going to like do this role, like instead of producing in theatre or adminning in theatre, which is what a lot of people do, I actually want to do this in music because I love it and I'm good at it and I can be of service to my community in that way. And hopefully some of the artist messages can get a bigger audience because it's really just about it's just about the artist stories being told to as many people as possible.
Mm-hmm. Would you say that you are someone that works on your weaknesses or hones your strengths?
Maybe A and B, but probably I'm sober, so I feel like you're working on the biggest weakness.
Okay.
I feel like, so I think I'm like sober now for 3 years and 7 months, something like that. I used to know like to the second because it's a little less torturous these days. But I feel like that process is, maybe prior to that I didn't necessarily work on my weaknesses as much as I do now because I feel like what sobriety asks you to do is to stare at the most honest version of yourself and come to terms with that. And therefore you have to do that deep radical honesty work of being radically honest with others, of realizing where you need to take accountability. And you don't always love doing that at the start, that's for sure. But like I do feel like lately perhaps I've been someone that probably addresses weaknesses. I think so. I don't know. That's a really good question. So I'm looking back because I remember I used to, when I was a teacher, I had like in the first couple of years, I was like looking after a year level and I remembered hating it because I didn't like to deal with people. And I was just like, I'm good at my job. Why do I have to be like such a little brat thing to think? And then now like my favorite thing is kind of managing people.
Yeah,
so
okay.
I think maybe somewhere I've inadvertently worked on my weaknesses. I think it's just, yeah, it's a privilege to get to work on your weaknesses as well. And it's a privilege to heal because that's what working on your weaknesses often is like there's a component of healing sometimes attached to that.
Yeah. That process of sobriety, was that something that came about slowly or something that was like a big decision that you needed to make?
Both, but it's something I've thought about from maybe 2018 to when it happened in 2022. And when I thought that I was making the decision, I had quite a ridiculous amount of work. And I was like, I'm not going to drink for that period. And then I noticed things were better. Also,
and was
worse.
For you, was it like I'm going to serve the work by?
Yeah, I'm going to serve the work. I'm going to serve myself. Yeah. And this is how I can also gain time.
Okay, yeah. So
I kind of did that and things were somehow simultaneously better, but also like much, much worse.
In what way were they better?
There was space between there was a bit of space. I could start to see that there was space between me wanting to react or my emotions and myself. Yeah. Then I started feeling like I had more choices.
Okay.
Instead of I think it's the best way to describe it. I remember being with friends probably recently, so it's still a little bit who I am. And they were talking about someone in their life and they were like, no, don't worry about talking to them about this because this is going on in their life and we don't need to do it. And in my head I was like, what do you mean you don't just say what you're thinking every second of every day? What do you mean you're not just blurting out how you feel? Okay. So yeah, that just wasn't something I kind of computed. Still don't overly compute. Someone was saying that the other day that they had a fantasy that they went into work and just started saying exactly what they think. And as they were telling me that. I'm like,
I don't know any other way.
what do you mean?
Yeah.
Like, don't we all do that? So I feel very like that. Yeah, I started getting that little bit of breathing room and that little bit of space, and I was enjoying the person that I was. And then it kind of just became, I also needed to be like, I knew that deep down, I knew. And there's been moments that again, similar to my creative journey, like there's these little constellations. And I remember, I think it was, I can't remember, I don't know him, but I do remember like Dan Sultan speaking about it in a podcast. And there was just the way he was describing himself. I saw myself in some of that. And was like, so there's these little constellations again of
the sober side of Dan, or the like which part of him speaking?
Just his story of why he got sober and why he wanted to. And it was just his story on a podcast, basically. And I was just like, I remember that being like, oh gosh, like it's one of those moments of, and then another moment that happened probably like, God, a year later, I met this incredible woman, Nina Kay, a married woman. And I went up to her, I think I'm going to go 2018. Or was it 2019? Might have been 2019, Big Sound. Yeah, 2019, because that's where I really got to like push it. So 2019, and she's been sober for like, gosh, many, many years. And I went up to her, I think on the last night, because I think I drank on the last night of Big Sound only. And I went up to her and I said, before I have like 1,000 drinks, I just want to say this to you. And I think I said something along the lines of, you know, I'm thinking about getting sober and your story has inspired me. I can't remember. But I do remember her kind of grabbing both of my shoulders and saying, if you're thinking about it, it means that it's your future, or you're going to dream it into existence. Okay. And I've been able to I still connect with her from time to time. And that is like an instrumental moment, like another Indigenous woman saying that, because I did dream it into existence. And so, yeah, there's these little constellations of moments that led to that choice. And it was the sobriety that made me go, oh, I can act now, because that was the thing that was kind of stopping me, because I'm like a physical, I like to train, but I don't like to do that. Like if I'm drinking and things like that, I'm just like I can work on a computer hungover. I can't do anything else. Okay. So and that's kind of then that sobriety led to me going, well, I can put myself on stage again because I can be the person that I need to be to do that work. So, yeah.
Tell me more about being on stage.
It's interesting. While I was the person that needed to get sober, was constantly watching Super Bowls and imagining them in a theater. And that's eventually what I did. Okay. Like, and you know, you're thinking about it, like if you're watching a Super Bowl, why wouldn't you just imagine, and you're fantasizing about it, why would you not just imagine you're at the actual Super Bowl doing it, right? But I was somehow just putting it in a theater. Yeah. And then that kind of, I don't know. Okay. I think it's just like, because I created a show that eventually looked like that. So I did Meet Your Maker in 2024, which is about like an Indigenous pop star that goes missing before the biggest show of her career to meet her makers. And it kind of has, you know, the errors, makers, Super Bowl show. It's kind of the structure of the piece. And so I always think back, it's like, I didn't know why I was doing that at the time, but it's so interesting that, and that work was instrumental in my sobriety journey, because I needed a rehab of sorts. And what better rehab than like learning how to sing and attempt to dance and play a couple of instruments, because all that stuff is really wonderful for healing and your brain. And I'm sure there's other things of like I think like for a year I would go to bed at night being terrified.
Tell me why? What?
Because I just lie there being like, what am I doing? Why am I doing
Why
this?
am I out
what
of my
am
depth?
I going to do? Like, it was a year of, I remember seeing my mum's partner. I remember he said something, because they saw me in like June. I was in the rehearsals and like it wasn't until September. And I'm like, yeah, I'm lying awake a little terrified. And he was like, that feels a bit soon. Like, you know, you can lie awake and feel terrified like a couple of weeks before, sure. But I was like, it's months and I'm lying awake feeling a bit terrified. But very little terrifies me now.
Is that something you like fed off that helped push you to the like next sort of skill level? Like,
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I learned a lot about myself because I didn't think I was an incredibly hard worker. So I wanted to kind of have to do something that I had to train a lot for, to show myself that I could be a hard worker. And then everyone was kind of like, cool, none of us would have defined you that way at all. And I also didn't think I was very brave.
Okay.
And everyone was also like, cool, wouldn't have thought that's, and what I realized is that it was more having a weird perfectionist standard of what bravery looks like or what hard work looks like. Like, I think in my mind, I thought hard work had to look like you wanted to do it and it was always fun and it was always great. And because I had moments, and because sometimes it's a struggle to do it. And it's a struggle, and early sobriety is like walking through honey. Like, and so I think it just made me go, oh no. Yeah. I learned a lot about some of the myths that I had kind of been telling myself about myself.
Cool. Learning instruments.
Basic.
Music.
Basic.
Yeah. What instruments?
Basic. Just piano.
Just piano? Did you have a teacher?
I did. I had a singing teacher. Well, actually, no, my voice is probably what I trained the most.
Okay.
Because to sell the character, like I had I remember having a skills map and in hierarchy. And I was like, acting I've done a theatre degree. I'm playing a heightened version of myself. I'll be sweet. Sure. I can live with that. I don't have to train that too much. I did do some training. I went and did a refresher course. So I did some training. And then I was like, to sell the character, I need to probably sing or sing the best in my register that I can. So that was like the next skill that I focused on the absolute most. And then I was like, if I can, I'll add a bit of dance. That's great. We'll just get someone to choreograph it. And then piano was kind of last. Okay. And it was just like enough to sell the character. But it's something that I've continued.
Let's go through that skill register or skill tree.
Yes.
Okay.
In a year and a half.
Acting.
Yes.
What was your process for getting back into that? And
all the other training.
Yeah.
Like learning how to sing, playing the instrument, putting an exorbitant amount of pressure on myself was very in line with the character, which was, again, a heightened version of myself, because to kind of mirror pressure, what a great metaphor of like that kind of character to do that. So I kind of did that, and I did like a refresher course on like sense memory and things like that, or what they kind of technically would call the method, but everyone thinks the method is staying in character 24/7, and that's not actually what it is. Yeah. That's just men probably behaving badly.
Excuses.
That's what that feels like. So I think Kristen Stewart said that recently, and so I kind of did that as like a refresher. And really that was just going, oh, that's right, I learned all this stuff at uni. Because sometimes, you know what it's like when you learn something a long time ago, you need little bits fed to you again.
Also like the precursory learning that you do at uni sometimes doesn't feed into the practice.
No, absolutely not. So and I loved acting because I feel, I don't know, I just really like it. I think it's something about, because you get to take these things, probably because I get to take all the things that are a little worrisome. I get to take these big emotions that I have that I've always not known how to deal with. I get to thoughts that are like, you get to control your thoughts. Like some of acting is controlling your thoughts. And so it's quite peaceful up there for a moment. Like it's quite peaceful when you get to control them, or like when your emotion. And so I've just really enjoyed, it was nice to go, oh, must be why my younger self liked this. But I had a whole different set of skills and a set of understanding and set of emotional intelligence to see why I might like it, if that makes sense. Because I always find like all of my, deep listening practice, being able to challenge thinking and relate to others always strengthens when I'm working on a character. Okay. Because I'm up there kind of navigating my thoughts a lot more.
How do you work on a elevated version of yourself as a character? How do you figure out what that is and who that is as a character?
I have no idea, really. Like that just kind of, I do feel like, and I talked about this in my doctorate, there's just like this component of making work where you're like, I don't know where that come from. Someone else must be sorting that out for me. Cool. So I feel like some of that comes from there, but I'm like a student of pop music. Like I love it. And I feel like, wanting to wear ridiculous clothes was mostly the reason for doing this entire work, for being like, I just want to wear the clothes that I can't wear down the street because I like ridiculous clothes. Like, this is my minimalism. And so I feel like that it's probably not hard to do a heightened version of yourself, and what you feel inside is pretty big as well. So it's probably just putting some of what was on the inside on the outside. People who know me close have definitely seen that.
What do you choose to keep in here versus what do you put out as the heightened version of you? Like, what do you hold back as your authentic, true self?
Well, I think also hiding behind that, like, character was helpful.
Yeah.
Like, although, you know, I remember talking to, or Mum was talking to, like, we were talking with her housemate. I had to be like, Mum, I'm not actually a pop star. Like, so, because in my head it was a really different character, but I don't know if it was to her.
Yeah.
So I may not be the best person to ask. I feel like that's with every, I don't know, that was probably not the art form like that. Well, I knew that was going to be vulnerability, and what I hoped is I'd hoped that because of the mob coming to it who knew me, I hoped that there was something in it for me standing on stage telling truth. Because I know, because what I was noticing my sobriety journey of being more vulnerable, every moment, micro moment that I had where I had a little bit of honesty with someone, it led to something vulnerable for them. Yes. And I was like, oh, what's this? Maybe that's what I'm doing on a macro level. So I guess for Meet Your Maker, I probably wasn't hiding myself as much as I was in other work. It was probably the first time that I didn't necessarily do that. I kind of told a bit more of the truth.
Cool. Did you feel like you had something to prove within there? Especially showing the work to, like, community and people close to you?
I don't feel like I had something to prove. I felt like I had to do really well because I felt like people would have that natural expectation that I would do it well. I also think I have that expectation of myself, so it's hard to know whose expectations is higher. I felt like I had to nail it, but I don't know if I felt like I had something to prove, like, per se. But I feel like that's that bigger piece of, I think maybe like post that show, I've probably been doing the, you know, in preparation for trying to pull something off in a really short period of time, I was looking for everything basically. Like, obviously I went to like community guidance and everything, but also like, okay, what's sports psychology going to teach me? Like, I was just looking for anything to help me out. And so much of sports psych, like I remember going to there wanting to be like, tell me how to be the best I can. And a lot of what they were doing was like getting you to define yourself outside of being the artist.
Yeah, okay.
And so focusing on, you know, how do you be a better daughter, granddaughter, niece, cousin, friend, community member, and like looking at all of your and so I found like, the work that I've got to do post has been really lovely because it's kind of taken stuff that I didn't really have time to do whilst I'd learned it. I was like, I don't have time to do that. I'm going to get to sing. But like, it was really interesting that I feel like post Meet Your Maker has been continued lessons.
It almost helped unlock some authenticity.
Oh, okay,
moments.
this is what I need to do, X, Y, and Z. And so when I do it again, I look forward to like what this layer. I look forward to doing it again because, like, you know, it was a 1.5 year sprint to something pretty big. So to be able to come back and do it again with like more training, but also having done it. Yeah.
Singing lessons.
Loved singing lessons. Mel Lathuris was my singing coach.
Okay.
She's based in so-called Brisbane. I don't work with her anymore as much because I'm in Sydney. So, yeah, I really enjoyed those lessons. I'd had singing lessons before. I needed singing lessons to get into uni. Like, you have to sing a song. So I got a couple lessons and sung a song to get into uni. And then I'd had a couple of lessons maybe at when I was at uni. But again, like, you know, I remember saying to my mum, I hate how much my mum ended up being right. I remember saying to my mum, maybe second year uni, and I'd be like, oh, if I had more flexibility or something, I'd be a physical theatre performer because I'd love it. Like, love it. It looks like awesome and fun. And she's like, oh, you could just go to Pilates every weekend. And I was just like, I can't afford that. And she's like, well, what are you about to spend your money on this weekend? It was probably going out and being ridiculous. I was young, we were, you know, and I was like, whatever. And then it turned out, you know, however many years later that it was investing in all of those things that it actually led to the much more physical theatrical performance I could do. Likewise with singing.
Do you feel like with singing that there are people who are just natural talents, or there are
of course,
always
but I think everyone can sing.
Skill that you
absolutely.
have to train?
I think that, yes, I think that eventually, from what I've learned and what I've seen, like eventually it's kind of like the law degree thing. Eventually you come undone, if that makes sense. Like often your natural talent. You reach the crucible of where. Well, you know, you'll always be able to sound awesome, but maybe after 10 shows in a row, and that might not happen when you're 21, but maybe when you're 28. Like, I don't know, like eventually, like I have found with a lot of even just thinking of friends and colleagues and peers and young people I've worked with who have this gorgeous natural talent who have needed some help because like it's a part of our body that we have to look after, and sometimes we can injure that as well. And so many of the people who started out that we would look to as like so-called idols in the music industry have all eventually probably had someone come in and help them protect it at the very least. At the very least protect their voice, let alone increase it. And
there's like a confidence. It's like, oh yeah, I can do 10 shows. But then suddenly it's like, oh, you do come unstuck.
Yeah. Or like knowing when to call it. Like, you know, I think Broadway, etc., know that there's like an actual time when they're like, we can't push through because the permanent damage like is actually, and why would you want to do that to your literal instrument? And so, I feel like, but I also think everyone, and, you know, I think singing teachers are brilliant. Like it was just fascinating. Like Mel would just give me this one little image and I'd be like able to do something.
Okay.
Or, and she would speak about.
What would those images be?
Like just things like, think about like a little kitten jumping over, like just like random things to get your soul, like all this stuff, or like even like when you get to like going put it in your head, put it in your belly, like there was just images that like would help, or little tricks, or making a certain sound, and then all of a sudden you could sing something. And then one of the things she mentioned, like as a singing teacher, what was fascinating for her is she got to witness that practice works. Because I was probably practicing more than most because I had this ridiculous expectation of like, I got to do this in a year and a half and I need to feel somewhat confident. Like because I was practicing several times a week, which is not necessarily what anyone else might be doing that she's seeing. She got to see like in real time what practice does.
Where did you practice?
At home and in a rehearsal room. Yeah.
Was the practice at home different to the practice in a rehearsal room?
The practice, at the start it was needed because it was like I needed to be in a little bubble. And then eventually you're just like hurling towards something that you're like, I just don't care. I need to get this done. The thought of not doing it on stage was enough to not care what was going on anywhere else. So, but I found, but it's interesting, like it's difficult to maintain that practice after. And I think also, again, like I find that singing is, I can't remember who I texted. I remember being like, I think singing is meant to be something we're all meant to do. And I think like all of the art forms, we've turned it into some capitalist thing that we're all meant to do. Yeah. We're all meant to do it. Like it's really good for you. Yeah.
Do you, I mean, this is a somewhat capitalist thing, but like, did you meet your expectations of where you could get to, or did you surpass them?
Hindsight, surpassed. At the time, I probably just thought I met.
Okay.
But cool. I've looked back and gone, that was mildly impressive. Well done.
Cool.
Or I've been able to listen to what people have actually said that I didn't want to hear at the time. I've even like probably read a review where I latched onto one thing and I went, oh, this is actually quite a good review, but at the time I didn't see that.
Yeah.
So I even look back at photos that I was like refusing to post and I was like, that's a lovely photo. I cannot believe I did not want to post to that. Like, yeah, I was in a very, it was like, I even look back at like why I'm excited to do it again. Like there are things that I was like, how did I not know to do that? Because your brain is so full.
Locked in. And,
like this is writing, directing. There was 50 minutes of film footage and I was 100 minutes out there by myself.
Yeah.
With the film footage at least giving me reprieve.
Yeah.
But it was like a huge task. And so, and like kind of not something that had been done like that, not many templates to follow as well. And so it was, brain was so full that I'm like looking back and I'm like, remember there was like one thing and I was like, oh, I just did it in the rehearsal room the other day and I was like, how did I not think to do that? And I was like, because your brain was too full.
Yeah, you had blinders on.
Yeah. And there were definitely things like I felt like, you know, but it was fine. It worked where I'd be like, I'm good at priorities. Like I'm naturally quite good at knowing what needs to be done for a project to be achieved. And so I would find that was probably happening in the room in a way that was helpful where I'd be like, well, this is how I don't have time to respond as an actor differently to this. So we're locking this in. So I'm looking forward to like maybe revisiting it and seeing what I can, having that experimental process to see what I can do to heighten the work.
As a director, how do you give yourself direction?
Much more cruelly than I do to anyone else.
Okay. In what way?
It's just me probably looking at footage being like, ugh.
How do you take care with yourself then?
I had lovely people around me that would remind me, being like, hey, that's not how you would like think about how you would speak to anyone else if they forgot a line. And I'm like, yeah, true. So I had really lovely people around me, like a wonderful, wonderful team. That team, that I had done Queen City with, another work of mine in 2022. So many of the people in Meet Your Maker were in Queen City. So I had an awesome group of people, but that is probably something that I am that is a work in progress. So I recently did a short film where I got to be directed, which was nice because then I was like, oh, we're done. I would have done 70,000 more takes because I've even told them, I'm like, I can't look at an edit too quickly. Like get it, yeah. So I feel like that's going to come with time.
Cool. Dance. That as a
loved
skill
it. Horrid.
Okay.
No,
Who
I really love it.
Teacher, trainer.
Katina Olsen did the choreography. So she made it really like doable for me. And I feel like it's something I am actually really looking forward to doing again.
Okay.
I really love dance. It's not something I think that I'm necessarily very good at. Singing and dancing is no joke. But I was dying every night. No.
Okay. Were you doing classes as well as, or
I
just
did a
the
few
choreography?
classes as well, but then I realized the best thing for me to do is just get it into my body as much as I can. But I have since, like now I'm kind of doing my own online classes to kind of help like get that bit looser.
In what genre of dance?
I just will pick something. Like I'll pick like contemporary or I'll pick jazz. Jazz is, again, I did jazz lessons for like one term in high school to get into uni.
Okay.
So I had to do one dance to get into just done a term of this stuff. I was like, I did a term of this stuff. I'll be sweet. But yeah, I really I love dance, like in terms of I love Indigenous dance, like contemporary dance. I didn't that wasn't something that I was overly familiar with outside of pictures in a textbook at uni because they didn't delve on it as much as they should have. Yeah. And we focused mainly on theatre. So I was obviously more across the theatre, but I just love contemporary Indigenous dance. No regrets, but if I ever went back, I would consider that as something that I would do when I was younger.
When you watch other people dance, are you thinking about that movement within your own body, or are you watching the shapes and feelings that?
I think I'm watching the shapes and feelings, but I think there's also something about body because I just am like so interested in, and I think that might, I think also like I found the physicality of the prepping for this work wonderful to get to know my body again because there's so many reasons we don't get to know our bodies, particularly growing up in the early 2000s as a woman.
Okay.
And like what the it was like I was reflecting on this with someone, like the term was heroin chic, literally, what you were expected to look like. And so the narrative that you tell your body, I think through Western lenses, particularly in what we're taught to speak about our body, but also like the way that perhaps we've experienced harm and things like that. And this is anyone and all different gender identities. I feel like I certainly had a bit of a disconnect from my body. So I found like I was so fascinated, and I'm sure, and I know dancers don't love their bodies necessarily. I'm aware of that, but there was something about the instrument.
Yeah.
It being this instrument of use and purpose and beauty that I loved.
Yeah.
And then and then getting to experience, even though the show only had a tiny bit of dance, it was quite physical. So getting to then start to experience that, oh, look at what my instrument, my physical body can do, was kind of exciting and cool. Like I think it's, I sit there in some awe of their instrument, I think.
Yeah.
And looking at a body in a different way that's not this, even though it is kind of art, but, in this consumerism, idealistic way. So there's just something about it's kind of like singing. It all comes back to the instrument, I think.
Piano.
I played organ like when I was in grade 8.
Okay.
So I had like the basics, which I didn't think it'd do much, but was helpful. Like, because I was like, I know what a chord is. I know what these things are. And then it was mostly holding chords.
Okay.
Because it was pop music.
Yeah.
So, and I would just the musicians would just make me something. I would get the tutorial, I'd learn it, and I would play it every day. I had someone gorgeous, Jake, come in and help me. But, yeah, it was just enough to kind of sell the character. But I've been like...
Did you also do lessons as well?
Yeah, I did lessons as well, which was fun.
And were they like structured around like theory, or were they specifically designed for the show?
Mostly designed for the show, which is like we focused a lot on like being confident moving my hands around different chords and things like that, and did a little bit of tempo, and we did what we needed for the show. But then eventually sometimes once I got a piece, it was just like working it to the bone. Yeah,
and getting it into your body.
Yeah.
Is there a crossover between like the dance training and the piano training in a way? I
think so. Like my tendencies, like I always was early on the beat.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So, like it reminded me of horse riding because
Explain.
Well, just more that like in dressage, you'd have to go at a certain marker, and I would always have a tendency to start cantering a little too soon.
Okay.
Or do a move too soon. So it was just very like, oh, it's me doing something too soon again.
Yeah. Is part of that like feeling the rhythm of the horse?
I think it's thinking too quickly. Maybe. The rhythm of the horse part, that's more just like good luck with your body there.
Okay.
I had a horse that had like this phenomenal gait.
Yeah.
Like gorgeous, gorgeous trot that like made, I remember we were in a semicircle to get our ribbons at the end of like a school competition, and we won a ribbon and we had to trot forward, and he loved putting it on a bit when there were an audience. He was a bit of a showman. And so he trotted out and was like bouncing, and you heard like this whole girls' school section sigh because he was just like the most gorgeous horse. He was just like, like that's literally what happened, because this horse was like, yes. And I was like, this is so funny. And trying to sit on that was a nightmare. Okay. So our bodies don't have the suspension that it required for that. So I found like say you had to, at the letter A, do a certain movement, sometimes I would come in too quick as well. But also I think like I've only done a horse riding lesson, God, it would have been years ago now. But I remember like I was dropping my left hand and I was like, wow, it's 2000 again, and I've got an instructor telling me I'm dropping my left hand. Like, just the things that you do.
That you keep a hold of.
Yeah, that it's like your habit like stays in that space. So that's what made me think of the piano and the dance thing, because I was like, oh, I'm coming too soon. Like,
Yeah. Did you try to sit on the back of the beat and like try and...
Yeah, and something I'm working on.
Talk me through that process. Like
just following Katina a lot.
Okay.
Like I had to just really follow her a lot. And I found visually I'm a good visual learner. So I would because I had screens in the room because I'm working off things, I would kind of like reverse the footage and do it with the dancers. Yeah, right. And that would help. But it's something that I'm thinking about a lot more now.
Did you were talking earlier about like the mental pathways and opening that, like, has that unlocked sort of new ways of thinking about other things?
I think so. Like,
on a conscious level or a subconscious level?
Yeah, I definitely think it's all unlocked something. So I think it's helped with some of my writing.
Okay.
In that.
In what way?
I'm not as eager to get a draft done as quickly as humanly possible, because I can and I always could. So I used to just think and then smash out a draft, whereas I'm now kind of thinking, writing. So I'm kind of waiting a little bit more. I'm going through like a period of like artist development, because I was like, okay, I reached this height. I want to develop my practice. Sure, I can do it this way. I know I can do it this way. That's great. But if I want to have several works in 2028, for example, I better start writing a lot of them now. So I've got a lot of works in development and I'm training my instrument more. And
in this case, your instrument is thinking.
Me.
Yeah.
And my thinking, but also my body, because if I'm going to do another solo show, what's that going to look like? I want to eventually do, like, I'll do Meet Your Maker again, but I want to do a solo show without all the dazzle. And so that's going to require like a lot of like, how can I push my voice in terms of speaking? And like, it's just going to require that. So I'm sort of going through an artist development period where I'm going, I'm writing a different types of plays that I haven't written, sort of in style and in form. I'm also still sticking into my pop culture world. I'm doing a bit more in film. So I feel like it's been a bit of more ego death, because you kind of have to go quiet and you get used to, particularly, we can pretend that like, ego death is important, but like, and it's something I have to continuously work on, but you have to kind of development is kind of going away and doing the work, and it's boring, quiet by yourself. Well, for me, it's by myself work.
How do you prepare each day for a thinking period?
It depends on the project. If I'm working on like a period piece, like 90s or something that comes from a specific time, like music is instrumental, like playlists of songs are just instrumental into like how I can get into a world. And I love walking and physically moving. And like,
are you listening while you're walking?
Yeah. And I've recently, I've started going back to listening to more music while I was walking, because I didn't listen to podcasts forever. And then I started listening to podcasts, and then that's all I was listening to on my walks. But I noticed I wasn't having any dreaming time on my walks. And so music was so good at that. And so I've started really making sure I listen to music on my walk. So I use kind of music. I have to have like a chair that I sit in. I had a chair in my studio when I was
What's your chair?
It was just a yellow chair that I had to sit in and just be like, I just have to have a chair that's not my office chair.
Mm.
And it's kind of like I've got one at home that I just kind of sit in my space, and I can just kind of sit there and be bored and do X, Y, and Z. When I was doing Meet Your Maker in this beautiful place in the Sunshine Coast in Gubbi Gubbi country, there was like couches everywhere. I remember just laying on the couch, and the person who organized the space was like, well, this is part of the work. And it is. So I have to kind of really orchestrate that. When I was really busy, I walked everywhere because I didn't have as much time to sit and think. And I was, sometimes I would have only a day to get a script together for certain things. And so I would use like walking everywhere as a way to kind of allow myself to think.
Within that walking and thinking and music and the dreaming time that you're having in that space, is it conscious or subconscious? Like, is the music helping tap into the subconscious?
Yeah, I think it is subconscious a lot, because that's where I'll go, okay, that song leads to this idea that I didn't actually think of before. So it's definitely taps into that subconscious a lot. And, dreams have been so vital to that. Like there's nothing greater than when you wake up and you're like, that was it. So I do find that music allows that while you're kind of awake. But also I'm looking for it sometimes too. Sometimes you do have to go looking for it.
Is there a conscious dreaming?
What do you mean?
I don't know.
Yeah. I feel like listening to music's close.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm a big daydreamer as well. So that feels loosely conscious dreaming. Like I'm definitely always making up scenarios in my head.
Yeah.
Cannot be.
Ritual or process?
For making work?
Yeah,
or?
for you.
I think they're
creative.
the same potentially, or they can be the same. I find there's like I spent 3 years thinking about it because I have a doctorate on how I make work, and I wanted to create a framework for creative development, but one that was not prescriptive, one that any person could pick up, any black fella could pick up. So it couldn't be like specific. It had to be it's almost like a framework on how to make your framework, because we're all individual. And I do find that is very like much how I kind of make work. And like place is important, country is important, both in where I am, but also my dislocation or not dislocation, like connection to it, whichever one. People and relationships are important. Advocacy / abolition is important. Representation is important. Like deep time is important. And so I find that like anywhere on that wheel, I can enter a work. And so whilst the process doesn't look the same, it's sort of like this. It's almost the circular, like the spiral.
Yeah.
Which we know a lot about. And so I find that there are the pathway in is always perhaps different, but by the end of it, everything's been touched and every moment has happened. It just happens differently. Sometimes it's all by myself. Sometimes it's with others. Sometimes I've got dramaturgs, like cultural dramaturgs involved. Sometimes it is, I've been asked to make something for young people, so I'm back in the room with young people. So it really it always changes, but the ritual is that all those bits happen, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And I definitely have like processes, before every show and every run we dedicate it to someone or a group of people, because remembering your why and your purpose is so much more important than the show.
Artist intent or audience perception?
I don't think about the audience as much. I don't not think about them. So I think it's the story. It's the artist's story. Like it's that. And I feel I will think about the audience, making sure that nothing I'm going to put on stage can be harmful to mob, if that makes sense. So I think about that being like, that is incredibly important, knowing, but at the end of the day, like the audience that I think about the most are mob, particularly if it's mob work, which it almost always is.
Yeah.
So I find that it's the artist story. And I do find like I have quite multi-layered works, lots is going on. There's lots of like this and that. And I do find that people being institutions are like, you'll need to explain this and this. And I'm like, no, go watch Twin Peaks or something. Like, not like, it's like, who do we ask to explain themselves versus who we don't ask to explain.
Yeah.
Like we let some people have that. Not every thread has to be woven and not every bit has to be explained. And we let some artists allow their work for all this interpretation. And then some, it's like, well, we need to explain every bit. And I'm like, well, I don't think I do. And I don't mind that there's a lot going on.
What are the unwritten rules?
For
your work or for moving in community?
Well, I have like rules for like how I like for work, but they're not necessarily the same as moving in community. I think like moving in community, it depends on the context, and that's going to change because community need to dictate that, right? So like in the music space, it's like listening to artists, listening to mob in the music space, listening to people who are being excluded in particular on the lands that these spaces are on, and same with kind of theatre and everything else. And also just making way, like something I've done a little bit more of, making sure that like whilst it's all interconnected, yes, more space in the arts is utterly important, not taking up so much noise that more pressing issues are not getting heard, even though I know that they're connected, etc. But I think like I have like a particular formula for my work, which is like, it's meta as fuck, it rewrites narrative. I want it hilarious and vicious at the same time. Popular, like indigenizing popular culture. So I have like these like sort of tenets that I sort of hit with my work that has allowed me to kind of play. Because whilst I don't have boundaries, I give myself some boundaries because I actually think you can create. That's why I'm excited about doing a work without having a giant screen. And like, I don't know if I have no glitter, but there'll be some glitter. But like boundaries, I'm just like interested in I'm also interested in what boundaries allow us to kind of recreate.
Is this new work another sort of step in like facing bravery?
Possibly, and mastery and skills. Like I'm interested in, and like the instrument, like developing an instrument, like I'm interested in that.
If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe to the channel. Staunch is a podcast from Awesome Blak, hosted by Travis de Vries and produced by Tristan Field, with production coordination by Jack Hickey, audio and video editing by Ripple Narratives. Episodes of Staunch are recorded with our partners DM Podcasts and MIK Studios on Gadigal Country, and at the Awesome Blak Studio on Wanneroo Lands.